For most of us, climbing looks like this. Pull on, try the move, fall off. Stare at your hands, try to understand why you fell. Pull on, try the move, fall off. Stare at your hands and come up with a new reason why you fell. Pull on again, try the move again, fall off again. You get it. We've all been there. But there's a better way. And in this video, we're going to talk about the obvious thing that most climbers are missing when it comes to difficult moves, and we'll learn several strategies that will help you do those harder moves, harder boulders, and harder routes faster. I'm Chris Hampton. This is Tape Tips from Power Company Climbing. Let's get into it. Now, most climbers initially learn to see a climb in a linear fashion. We start from the bottom, we go to the top. It just makes sense. But when we approach harder things, it's advantageous to switch that up. And we know that when working on routes or boulders, it's important to do links through the top, starting somewhere in the middle, and then eventually link the whole thing together once you've learned all of the pieces. And the thing is, we can do this for individual moves as well. See, we spend a ton of time doing the bottom half of a move, learning the start position, the initial trajectory, and the tension required, and all of this micro beta that makes the start easier, whether it's exactly how to hold the starting grips or how to stand on that tiny foot in order to create tension or whatever. But many climbers never learn the end of the hardest moves. We just hope to get lucky and stick it and send. And maybe we do get lucky once in a while. But I personally want to do more climbs, and I want to do them faster, so I'm not banking on luck. Instead, it's a smart tactic to learn the end of a difficult move at the same time as you're learning the beginning. Here's how you can do that. So the first and simplest thing to do is to get into the finishing position. And I don't mean the next stance, but the actual finishing position, even if it's strange or hard to hold. And don't just pull on and hold it. Try to understand it, explore it, move out of it. We have to be sure not to miss any of the subtleties of this transition between this hard move and whatever the next move is. For instance, when I do this move, I know it's possible that at least one foot is going to cut because the footholds are our inductor 20s and they're terrible little feet. Ideally, I want to keep them both, but I also want to know what to do if one of my feet comes off. Do I need to get that foot back on in order to move to the next position, or am I better off just accepting the cut and then putting my foot onto the next hold? Don't shortcut this step. Get into these positions or you may not know what to do when you finally do stick that hold. But that still leaves the actual path through the air that we still don't know. So the next simplest thing to do, indoors anyway, this tactic doesn't really work outdoors most of the time, is to use an intermediate hold that's near the path of your movement and try to do the finish half of the move from there. For the hardest moves, like this one, I'll often start close to my target hold and then, over the course of a few attempts, back my way down on holds that are closer to my starting position. Now, if you're on a spray wall or board, you'll have quite a few options. I'd suggest using some holds slightly to either side of what you think the correct path is as well. This way, if you've got that trajectory slightly wrong, you can still reel it in because you've sort of bracketed that path. And using this tactic is going to do a few things for you. Number one, you'll learn the sensation of catching the target hold. You'll learn to commit to it and what that feels like. You'll also learn the tension required and what happens when you land the hold. Maybe you barn door harder than you expected, or maybe your feet are dangerously close to coming off and you need to have that plan B in place. Or you learn exactly how much you need to stomp the feet so that they do stay on. Regardless, it's better to learn it this way than to spend the energy doing the first half of the move over and over and over. And like I said though, that often doesn't work outdoors because you're already going to the only available hold. There are though a couple of things you can do out there, or indoors as well, to help. Now on boulders, the power spot is indispensable. And if you're not familiar with power spotting, all this means is that you're having your spotter help you through the move as much as needed. I was a gymnastics coach before I was a rock climber, and we power spotted our athletes nearly any time they were learning a new skill, whether it was to help them get more height, or to spin a little faster, or just to make sure their head didn't land on the ground. The spotter can take a lot of the weight or do a lot of the work, and then over the course of a few attempts, gradually back off of what they're doing. And bonus tip here, it's really easy to get attached to the power spot and then think that you need it to do the move. So if you're the spotter and you suspect that the climber's basically doing the move themselves already, but they still want your spot, you can start with a hand on them, and then as they go, just let them do it. That's worked more times than I can count. Now, power spotting well will take some practice. Sometimes you'll need the power spot around the lower back, sometimes at the shoulders. Depends on several factors, including which parts of the body are actually moving and what's falling away from the wall. And of course, don't just power spot someone without asking. And even then, communicate about how much the climber wants you to do. Now, if you're on a sport route, there's a simple workaround. Get yourself clipped up so that you're effectively on top rope for the move, and your belayer can give a little help by pulling harder on the rope instead of leaving it slack. And how well this works will depend on the angle the rope is pulling, but it's definitely worth a try and can help you learn the end part of a really hard move. My last suggestion works wherever you are. Indoors, outdoors, boulders, sport climbs. And despite it being incredibly effective, I can count on one hand the number of times I've actually seen it employed. And that's to try downclimbing the move. Now, notice I said try. And that's because most of the time, if the move is this hard, you aren't going to be able to downclimb it. And that's totally fine. You've been practicing the first half of the move already, so we don't need to actually do the downclimb. You're only looking for the finishing half here, or the starting half of the downclimb. And as you let go to begin downclimbing the move, you'll have to create tension so that you have some control. This is the same tension you'll want when sticking the move. And indoors, you can always stop the downclimb at an intermediate hold. Like I said, we only need that little initial bit of the downclimb. Now, we know that spending time on a finishing link is a smart tactic for hard climbs. So why not apply that same concept to individual moves? It's the best way to dial into the position, tension, trajectory, and commitment required for those really difficult movements. Give it a try next time you run up against one of those moves that you just aren't connecting with, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. And if you have other tactics that you use in these situations, let me know in the comments. And if it seems like you're one of the people who have more trouble with the beginning of hard moves, we'll be talking about that in our next video about finding controllable positions. So subscribe now to make sure that you don't miss it. And better yet, while you're at it, subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Current, where we connect the dots across all of our content, podcasts, imagery, videos, articles, and more. That link is in the description below. Thanks. I'll see you next time.